Hello, it's me, Ariza Gaming, and welcome back to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, the series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and efficiently. So today I want to talk about the Geothermal Power Plant. This is a big feature of the Frosty Planet Pack DLC. You can find it on any of the Ceres starting asteroids, so Ceres Classic, Ceres Minor, Ceres Moonlets, or the blasted Ceres Seed in the lab. And it's essentially a victory condition. It's kind of like a story trait, except it's mandatory. You can't turn it on or off. And if you actually manage to get it working online, you get an achievement for it. So what does it actually do? Basically, it has liquid ports. You have to activate it first, but it has liquid ports, and you can pump up to 30 kilograms per second of liquids into the pump. And once it reaches 12 tons of pressure, so after 400 seconds of filling at maximum flow rate, it will then output the materials via 3 geovents across the map. This is a normal Ceres asteroid that we just started on, and you can see the printing pods over here, and the power plant is right at the bottom of the asteroid. This will always be the case here. In this case, it's just above the oil biome. But there's 3 vents. They look sort of like this. 2 of them will be disconnected, and you just need to have a duplicate come down to activate them. And one of them will actually have a blockage. This one doesn't have a blockage, that's one of the normal ones as well. Sometimes you'll find them in the magma biome, sometimes you'll find them a little bit higher up. This one here has a blockage. Very suspicious looking lead nodule that you'll need to unblock somehow. But essentially, once you input the materials, or once it reaches the pressure, it outputs the materials that you put in at 150 degrees C hotter if they're within a certain temperature. Normal liquid temperatures, it's going to heat it up by 150 degrees C. And that's regardless of specific heat capacity. So if you're heating up 30 kilograms per second of water by 150 degrees C per second, that is an absolutely gigantic amount of heat energy. And that's mostly what I want to talk about today. I'll do another video talking about higher temperature applications for the geothermal heat pump. But essentially, I just want to talk about how you can fairly quickly hook it up on a Ceres asteroid to get absolutely insane amounts of steam power. And the funny thing is, it's not actually that complicated of a design. So in this video, I'm going to be talking more about the logistics of how you would actually set it up, and we'll go from there. So first of all, just with the building itself, you do actually just need someone to activate it. So if we click this little button here, you need to actually fill it with 1,200 kilograms of steel. So you will need to make some steel. That means you will need to get a metal refinery going. But you're probably going to want to get a metal refinery going anyways. What I would recommend that you can actually do is you can actually put it in this little room here that's part of the actual room design. I don't know why this is all covered up like this. But yeah, if you literally just put a metal refinery in here, so hook it up, plug it into whatever you want, generate your steel. You're going to need some refined carbon, so you're going to need to set up a kiln somewhere as well, and you're going to need to put some coal in that, or possibly some wood. So that's just in the refinement section. Do that. You'll have to get some lime as well, possibly with the rock crusher, which you can get going pretty early on. If you've got critters laying a decent amount of eggs, or you've got any fossil anywhere on the map, you should be able to crush that in the rock crusher and get some lime fairly quickly. And then you just need iron, so you just need to find iron ore somewhere on the map. On the Ceres asteroids, you can find it in these biomes here. You can find it in the Mammoth biomes. There's plenty of iron ore that you could refine into steel, into iron, and then into steel with the metal refinery. So you'll need 1,200 kilograms of steel, and we'll just give it to this guy in the form of a big cube, and we'll see what it looks like when we activate the pump. Right, so Meep has very graciously mined up a nice big cube of steel, so now he's gonna... Let's actually give him some oxygen, that'd be a good idea. He's gonna pick it up, put it in the machine. Fairly straightforward. He's gonna do it 200 kilograms at a time because he's a bit of a weenie. But yeah, we'll just speed this a little bit up. Perhaps I should have gotten a duplicate with some strength to do this. We'll see. But yeah, just make 1,200 kilograms of steel. Then he just needs to do a quick toggling action. And then it will say Geothermal Heat Pump ready. So now, at this point, you can use it to pump liquids out of the connected geovents, and the vents emit various byproducts. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The byproducts are not the focus of this design. The focus of this design is just getting massive amounts of steam power. I think it's the easiest thing to do, and I think it's also perhaps the most important use case for this building. So now you'll see it actually expands upwards. It's crazy. And now you can see it's actually got 3 liquid ports here. So you want to fill up with liquids. Now, you can use this already. All you need to do is actually get into these sort of geovents here, just to show you what it would look like. I'll spawn a duplicate in here, and we'll get them to reconnect the geovents. So it's literally just a little errand. They're going to try and turn the wheel. They're not quite going to make it, but they're going to do their best. But he's alright. Thank you for your service, Max. So this vent is now ready. We'll then get rid of the duplicate, and then we'll go to the next one. And it's exactly the same thing. So we'll just get this one activated. There you go. And then this one up here, in this case, the blocked one, you can't activate this immediately. What you have to do is you have to pump a liquid into the geothermal heat pump that's hot enough to actually melt the blockage, which is made of lead. And because the heat pump heats up the liquid by 150 degrees, this means that you have to actually have the liquid be about 179 degrees C when it goes in. When it actually enters the port, it needs to be on average 179 degrees C to melt that blockage. You don't necessarily have to even melt the blockage. Each geovent down here can output 15 kilograms per second of material. So if you have just the 2 unblocked vents hooked up, then they can output 30 kilograms per second of material. It's not quite 100% efficient because of some of the impurities that come out and because of how the material is distributed between the 2 vents. There's no piping or anything that you can access on the map for this. So you're not going to get quite 100% throughput with 2 vents, but it's pretty close. So unblocking the 3rd vent is kind of optional, but I'll show you how to do that as well. But essentially what you would want to do, you'd want to get your metal refinery going. You would want to fill it with a liquid that you can heat up to the right sort of temperature to actually get it to activate. So what we'll actually do is we're going to build a very rudimentary loop. What we'll actually do is we'll put a pump in here just for now. We'll put a pump in the oil biome. So just a regular liquid pump. We're going to make it out of a heat-resistant material. So let's say gold amalgam in this case. You may want to just... yeah. Just dig a little access shaft down. We'll put a ladder in here. You can do this a lot more neatly in your run, but I'm just showing you what you can do to sort of get started. We'll hook up a little conductive wire as well. We can just run that past this building. So you'll need to have some kind of power source available to hook up the pump and then the metal refinery. So for now, I'm just going to put in, instead of doing the dev pump like we normally do, we're just going to put in some manual generators. We're going to get the dupes to do some hard work today for a change. Just for a change. So I guess we'll put in 4 manual generators. Hook up the wire. We'll spawn in some duplicates. These guys have had it too easy for too long. So we'll get that hooked up, and then what we'll do is we'll get that pump to go, that pipe to go up here. What I'm going to do, the oil is quite hot in the biome, so we're going to use that. We're going to make insulated liquid pipe. Igneous rock will do. And then for now, we're just going to pump that over these 3 pipes here. Again, this is just to get it working, unblocking the vents, so you can use it as efficiently as possible. So we're going to send that liquid up here. We're going to send it back in here. And then what we could do is we can actually put a liquid pipe thermosensor on here. And we can set this so if the liquid is above 180 degrees C, then we'll tell it to go to the geothermal heat pump. And if not, then we'll tell it to recirculate. So what we'll actually do is we'll put a... So what we'll do is we'll set up the liquid shutoff here. If the liquid's warm enough to go into the geothermal heat pump to unblock it, then we'll move it down here through the shutoff. Great. If not, then we'll take it out this way. We'll put in a bridge here, and then we'll put in a bridge over here for the input oil. And what that will do, if we connect these outputs up like this, what that will do is it will make sure that the loop always prioritizes recirculating the oil rather than loading new oil in. And then we can just bridge this one down here. And then we can just feed it into one of the, or multiple of them even. But you're only going to be having 10 kilograms per second go through one pipe. So you only need to plug this into one pipe. And that's what we'll do. So all we'll need to do then is actually hook up a battery. Let's actually put some more batteries over here for these guys. And I'll put some more dupes here too, so we can actually get the metal refined. But this is just to show you like how rudimentary it can be. You don't actually need to have a super advanced setup at all to get this thing online. You can brute force it as early in the game as you can by just actually managing to get down here. Your constraint is going to be how quickly you can actually move from where the printing pod is down to the bottom of the map. But if you have bionic duplicates that can dig through the carbon dioxide pits without any issues, they should be able to access this fairly quickly if you have the DLC. So, yeah, we'll get that set up. Yeah, we've got some wires plugged in. We will hook up the automation wire. So connect the pipe sensor to the shutoff like this. We'll need to plug the shutoff into the wire as well, so I can go there. And I'm going to spawn another duplicate just to do the actual work. So we're just going to spawn in some iron just to actually get the metal refinery recipe unlocked. So we'll get that. We'll get some coal and refined carbon, and we'll get some lime as well. And then we'll get them making some steel. Although we do actually have to put in some oxalate here. Yeah, there you go. So, we're just pumping the crude oil up. We're keeping it nice and insulated. All of this pipe work here is going to be insulated. And that's primarily going to deposit into the metal refinery. Now, let's actually just pour in some... I mean, in this case, I'm just going to add the refined carbon straight up. You guys know how the kiln works. There is a recipe for wood to refine carbon as well. 100 kilograms of wood produces 50 kilograms of refined carbon. That's what you'll be using on the Frosty Planet. And then the lime and stuff you'll get from eggs, but let's actually just put some fossil in. They can dig that up and make that into lime. So, here you go. Just have a fairly large amount of fossil. Enjoy. So yeah, we're not pumping any oil in yet. It's all just still filling up the metal refinery. And then what we'll notice here, so when you're hovering over the metal refinery and you can hover over the recipe, it will actually tell you how much exactly it's going to heat the crude oil up by, or whatever liquid you put into the metal refinery. We're using steel for this, primarily because A, we need steel to get this running, so you're probably going to have this set up already. And B, it produces the most heat per action. In this case, it'll heat up the crude oil by 138.4 degrees C, because it's actually coming into the building at around 92.7 degrees C from the oil biome. Even for a cool oil biome, it should be able to get it above 180 degrees C in the pipe after just one action. So, should be fairly practical to actually get it working. So, I'll just queue up one batch of this. Actually, I'll just queue up as many as we can, and then we'll see what happens. So yeah, you've got some lime now. Go ahead and put that in. Who's going to do the dirty? Oh, looks like we need just a little bit more lime. Marie's working on it as fast as she can. But yeah, you really don't need a lot of advanced technology to get down here and to do this. All you need is some persistent dupes. Make sure you oxygenate wherever you're going if you're not using bionic dupes. So now it looks like Quinn is going to make the steel here. It's going to take him a little while because he's not very skilled, but again, he's doing his best. And then what will happen is, that's going to come out, and it's going to come out at about 231 degrees C, so that's great. So that means it's actually hot enough, and it's going to come straight out the other end. And that means we can start feeding it through here. Now, the liquid will conduct a little bit of heat into the pipe, so be aware of that. But for the crude oil, it's not too bad. And the liquid temperature is more or less the same as what it is when it comes out of the metal refinery, when it goes into the pump. So this liquid is hot enough for it to work. Now, you need 1,200 kilograms, or 12,000 kilograms of liquid to go into this. So considering that this produces 400 kilograms of coolant each time you use it, you're going to need to make 30 batches of steel to actually unblock that vent. So we're going to get Quinn to do that, and then we'll be right back. One more thing to note. if you're mixing in a mix of liquids to try and get this up to the right temperature, like say you've got some hot crude oil here, but you might also have some hot liquid phosphorus or something. I don't know, maybe if you're refining some phosphorus. If you're dumping a mixture of liquids in, the final temperature of the liquid in here, it's the average temperature based on the specific heat capacity of the liquids. So because oil has a lower specific heat capacity than, say, water, if you filled this up with 6 tons of hot 230 degrees oil, and then 6 tons of 80 degrees C water, it's going to come out a lot closer to the 80 degrees C than the 230 degrees C. So do be careful if you're using mixes of liquids to heat stuff up. Also, that means when you're actually inputting the water to turn into steam, later on when we're trying to get the power out of the steam turbines, if you get a few other hot liquids in there, that can help raise the temperature of the steam up if you want it to get a little bit hotter. But because the other liquids are going to have a lower heat capacity than the water, you have to put in a lot of the other liquids compared to the water to get the temperature up, and it's probably not worth it because then you're just getting less overall throughput on the water. You're getting a lot of that hot liquid back out. Like, the hot oil will be coming out even hotter, and it's not necessarily helping you out. So, generally, I don't really recommend mixing in liquids with this. I would just either pump in one liquid when you try to heat it up, and then just pumping in the water, preferably just the output of the steam turbines. That's the funny thing about this as well, because if you put the 95 degrees C water in here, and then it gets heated up to 245 degrees C, if that runs through the steam turbine, it's going to come out of the steam turbine at 95 degrees C, again, after all is said and done. So it is literally a closed loop, and you don't even have to do any sort of automation or consume any power to try and get that closed loop working. You are going to lose 960 kilograms out of that 12,000 kilograms you put in. 8% is deleted, so you are going to have to input a small amount of that liquid. So if it's 960 kilograms per run, and you're feeding it 30 kilograms per second, you're going to need to feed it 8% of that additional. So that's going to be 2.4 kilograms per second of water from a different water source, like a water geyser, or your cool steam vents or something. It's not 100% efficient, but you will get some of that 960 kilograms back as solid, liquid, and gas impurities of different kinds. But yeah, it's close enough to a completely closed loop. So long as you have like one water source from your colony hooked up, you can pump it in here and it's not going to run out of water. So, we're back. The geothermal heat pump is on the last batch of heated up oil before it actually explodes. So you can see it's moving around a bit more now. What we've done just to set up these vents, you would have put in a liquid lock to actually get in here and maintain this vacuum in each of these 3 rooms. Each of these 3 rooms starts in a vacuum. And you're going to have to go through the oil biome anyways to get to these ones in the magma zone. So you are going to need to actually... You can make the liquid lock out of oil, and that shouldn't boil no matter what with the temperatures of the liquids we're putting in here. So make sure that's ready to go. Make sure you haven't got any extra gases in here than you wanted. We've set up that one down here as well. We've used oil on this one as well because the materials are going to come out of this one at the same temperature as in the other vents. So don't do this with water, otherwise, if you do it with water and there's some steam coming out of this as an impurity, then it might cause your liquid lock to boil, and then it's going to contaminate the rest of your area. You're going to end up with oxygen in your vent room, which you don't necessarily want. So yeah, we'll just let them finish it off. You can see the final liquid temperature we've ended on is about 228 degrees, and that's been absolutely fine. So we'll just let all that liquid pump in, and then we'll see what happens. It's fairly quick when it does actually activate. 97%. It's very fun. It's very fun to watch this. The anticipation will build. Yeah, this is the final batch here. You can see it's quite a bit cooler now just because the pipe has absorbed some of the heat, but that's fine. It's also because the oil in the oil biome has been cooling down a little bit. Right, here we go, 99%. When's it gonna flip over? You'll know when it activates, trust me. Yeah, it'll be at the end of this batch here, so just that little packet coming in there. There you go. So the first time you do it, it's gonna stop. It's gonna say attention required, and it's gonna come up with Geothermal Power Plant initiate. So you put that here, you'd activate the power plant, and there we go. Because the liquid we pumped in was hot enough, it will come up with this little dialogue. Your duplicates have successfully cleared the obstructed geovent. So we'll go over there. You then achieve the imperative. That was all that was needed, and you get the cinematic. So the little lead block comes out. The impurities are getting fired out now. This is probably as good a time as any to talk about the impurities. Oh, hold on. Yeah, there we go. We get some, yeah, we get the cutscene playing. You get a little bit of music. We'll turn our music back on. There we go. So you get the little cutscene. The impurities come out. In this case, because we put the oil in and it's in about sort of 226-ish degrees, it's coming out at 376 degrees. So we're going to get igneous rock, granite, obsidian, salt water, polluted water, and rust out of this. Now the salt and the polluted water are going to come out as steam and salt and polluted dirt because of how the actual temperature is, and the ratios are fixed. If you get an impurity because the liquid is hot that you put in is hot enough, you're always going to get the same amount of that impurity out. It's going to be distributed roughly evenly between the 3 vents, but that's not really you don't know exactly how much is going to come out of each vent. But yeah, click proceed. Then we can go have a look. We get the achievement. Amazing. We also got some more achievements because we were mucking around in sandbox mode. You know how it is. Right, so if we look at here, you'll see the leads come out. Yep, there's the lead. We're getting some steam out. You're not going to get a huge amount of steam in here. And in this case, because the blocked vent was in the environment, even though the steam is very hot, it should condense fairly quickly. And you can see here, like, some of the steam is actually coming out at 500 degrees C. It's interesting that the steam actually comes out hotter. I'm not entirely sure why it comes out hotter than the actual output temperature of the oil. But anyways, so you get the little unblocking there, and then on the actual activated vents, now the hot oil that we put in is coming out. So you can see we got some salt in here from the salt water as well. There's some granite. There's a little bit of rust in here as well. So we've gotten the expected materials out. And the 2 vents where we did connect them, that's where all the oil is going to come out. So you'll want to pump that back up if you want to use that for something else. One thing to note, if you put in the oil, so let's actually set this to say, if we set this to say, I don't know, like 300 degrees C, then if we're waiting until the oil is at least 300 degrees C to go in, then it will actually boil to petroleum using the geothermal heat pump. It'll come out of the vents as petroleum at a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, obviously, you're going to have to cool that petroleum back down again, and that's not going to be as efficient as setting up a dedicated petroleum boiler. But this does let you get some materials-efficient petroleum fairly easily, and perhaps a little bit less complicated than using an oil refinery dealing with the natural gas. We've got some natural gas down here anyways, because one of these duplicates is flatulent, but that's besides the point. In any case, we don't actually need to dump any oil in here anymore. Now that we've unblocked the vent, it's, we'll wait for them to all vent, and then we can actually set up all the steam turbine infrastructure. That's the sort of meat and potatoes of what we're actually doing. That's why we're actually bothering with this. It's not because of the little shiny coprolite toy that you get that you can put on a pedestal. So, yes. Now what we'll do is we're going to actually disconnect the oil, so don't dump any more in. It looks like we dumped a tiny little bit of oil in. That's not going to matter too much. What we will do is we'll hook up a water source. So in this case, we've got plenty of liquid water across the map. Standard Frosty Asteroid, so it's pretty good. What we'll actually do is we're just going to pump it in through 3 different sources. And what we'll do is we'll actually we'll build it as insulated pipe. I'm just doing this to visually show what you would do. I'm not going to show you the exact layout. We're going to plug it in here, and then we'll get some other water sources hooked up. Eventually, we're going to connect these all to the steam turbines. So we'll hook up, like, let's say these 2 little ponds. We'll just put some separate water pipes coming in here. So you'll need some bridges and whatnot. You can remove all of the oil pipe related stuff when you're done with this, and then set up a metal refinery, perhaps in the area with the steam. You can make it out of ceramic and have an industrial sauna going. You don't actually want to connect these. These are 3 independent pipes that are each going to run 10 kilograms per second of water through them in the end. So we'll just build some wires just to hook this up. That's fine. It's just going to connect in here. I will actually put in a couple more dupes just to get some more dupe power going. I don't think this is going to overload the wire. Actually, this is probably going to be fine. If we're not running the metal refinery anymore for demonstration purposes, we should be fine. I'll put in some more dupes anyways. There you go. So now you can fit 3 different pipes of water in here. So I'll just connect this one up as well. And then you'll see that go in. So because we had some oil in here, the liquid temperature was 226-ish degrees from the 400 kilograms of oil we put in. But as we put the water in, the liquid temperature rapidly starts to decrease. And especially because we're putting cold water in this case, I mean, this is 35 degrees C water. This up here is the same temperature. That's going to come out as 185 degrees C steam out of these vents. So that's good. The next part of this is going to actually be setting up your steam turbines. Now, you do need a little bit of radiation research for steam turbines. So you can get that either through ranching shine bugs or perhaps using a manual rad bolt generator with uranium lumps across the map. If we're on a standard Ceres asteroid, there is a substantial amount of uranium for you to just grab. So it shouldn't be too challenging to get your radiation research going. There are also some wheeze warts in the regular frozen biomes with the sleep weeds. And there's also abundant shine bugs. So the only thing you need then for the steam turbines that you don't already have is plastic. And guess what? You can hook up a polymer press with the bonbon trees, which you find at the top of the asteroid. These have a little liquid port in them, and they'll produce nectar when they're receiving light. The wild ones, provided you keep them at the right temperature, provided you keep them below minus 50 degrees C, if you've just got the shine bugs in the room, just set up a pipe and leave them be, and they'll gradually produce a small amount of nectar for you. You can get that hooked up really early on as well. You don't even need a pump. And then just put that into a polymer press. Just put this somewhere where you don't mind all the waste heat and the waste carbon dioxide coming out. And then you can turn that nectar straight into plastic. And we're back. And I just want to show you what a sort of build will look like for handling all of the steam power actually coming out of the geothermal heat vents when you're venting them at 10 kilograms per second. I'm not going to do the usual thing where we run through the whole thing in sandbox mode and we go through each individual step, because the reality is what you actually build around these vents is going to vary a lot depending on the space constraints, and we're going to talk more about that in the last part of the video. But I want to show you an example build that I put together. In this case, what we've actually done is we've used 9 steam turbines and we've blocked many of the inputs. The reason we're doing this is because the steam comes out of the turbines at about 240 degrees C. If the input water is coming in at 95 degrees C because it's the output water from the steam turbines, then it's going to be coming in at about 245 degrees C. So at that point, you're actually wasting some of the power if you've got all the steam turbine vents unblocked, because the steam turbine produces 850 watts when 2 kilograms per second of 200 degrees C steam is coming in. To get all the power out of 245 degrees C steam, you need to block 2 vents per steam turbine. So for the most part, we just block the outer vents. And that means we actually need 9 steam turbines to handle 10 kilograms per second, because 9 times 1.2 is 10.8. So this many steam turbines can definitely handle all the steam coming out of this. The overpressure threshold on the vent is actually 120 kilograms per second, 120 kilograms per tile. So even if the pressure gets really high over here, it will spread out into the rest of the room eventually, and that will be okay. So you can see none of these steam turbines are maxing out yet. What we've got is we've got the initial oil from when the vent erupted earlier that you saw. That's still in here. We're using this as just a thermal exchange medium for everything. We've also built some temperature plates. We made them out of diamond because we have access to the oil biome to get at all of this stuff. You will always have access to it somewhere. If you don't have diamond, granite is fine. You just want something to make sure is interfacing between the steam and the oil. We put the Turbo Aquatuner in here as well. We've set up on a cooling loop, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. We've also got an auto sweeper and a conveyor loader in here. We've got 2 auto sweepers actually that can both focus on this one tile. That will ensure that any solids that come out of the heat vent are captured, and then we're just going to dump them over here. If you want to actively cool them, I would actually recommend having another Thermo Aquatuner set up for that, because there's a relatively large amount of heat in the solids. And to get this working with just one Thermo Aquatuner per vent, we're actually using the ethanol heat condensation technique that we talked about in the previous video. I'm not going to go into all the details here, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to use the specific heat capacity difference between ethanol's liquid and gas states to delete some heat to provide some extra cooling for these turbines. So these turbines aren't going to be running at max throughput. When you've got 1.2 kilograms per second going into a steam turbine, the water can actually go up to 270 degrees C. The steam can go up to 270 degrees C steam to actually get it to max heat production. So even though we've got 9 turbines here, they're not producing max heat, and combined with the ethanol heat deleting effect, which we'll see later, one Thermo Aquatuner can handle this all. But putting the solids, actively cooling the solids in the room, will go over that threshold. So generally I don't recommend doing it, but what you can do, so the coolant loop here, we've set this up with just nectar we've gotten from the mercury biome that we talked about earlier. We're just running it through our standard Thermo Aquatuner bypass. The pipe starts here, and this ensures the cooled liquid recirculates in the loop. We're going to cool it to sort of around 40 degrees. The coolant line is fairly long, so we want to make sure there's plenty of room for it to exchange heat. But importantly, it won't exchange heat until the ethanol actually boils. Again, have a very small amount of mass of ethanol in here, so that when it boils quickly as the turbines heat up, and then it will immediately condense. Make sure to have plenty of temperature plates in here. They don't have to be diamond, because I realize it's a lot of material just for one vent. You can make them out of granite and it'll be fine. The radiant liquid pipe, you could use lead for this. Lead's not the most conductive material, aluminium is, but lead is mostly fine for that. And yeah, we're going to send that over here. And eventually it's going to heat to the point where the ethanol boils, and that's all going to be sorted. Now, you can make it smaller with less steam turbines if you're not worried about capturing 100% of the heat. That's absolutely fine. You're generating a lot of power from this regardless. You can just set it up with 5 steam turbines, but at that point, each steam turbine is going to be generating a fair bit of heat. The amount of heat is the same. You can just still cool it with the ethanol heat deletion trick, but bear in mind some of the power is being wasted. That's important to note. No matter how many turbines you use, the amount of power you're going to get out, the amount of heat you're going to generate in the turbines is the same, so you'll need the same amount of cooling. But you're going to need to, you're not going to be able to capture all of that power. So yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to fixate on the specifics for too long, but you're going to need an active cooling loop. I like using the ethanol heat deletion trick for this because it means you can use less aquatuners, you get a bit of a power saving there. Nectar's a great coolant for it, and you just want to make sure that once you've actually boiled, once you've blown the top off your other gas vent, the blocked one with the coprolite, that you've just plugged all of your water pipes in here. See, in this case, the vent is actually unavailable. This vent down here is still venting because it partially blocked with some sand, but it looks like it's gone back to normal now. So if we speed it up, we'll speed it up a little bit. This should vent soon, and then we can see the actual vent erupt in this one, which we've set up over here. That was just a practice build. I really do just want to emphasize, each build will look different depending on the space constraints. I don't actually really want you to follow a guide absolutely precisely. It's the principles that I want you to capture from the video, which is why I'm not showing so much detail for this section. You can see now it's erupting, the steam's coming out, the pressure is decreasing as you go down here, but the pressure will get high enough that all the turbines kick in, and it will get to the point where they may not all be running continuously, but you will get more or less the throughput of water you want out. And this ethanol here is still heating up. We'll come back to it once it's heated up, but don't put too much ethanol in here, because if you do, it will be as a gas for a long time. You need a lot more heat and cooling, like, to exchange before it boils and condenses each time. So that means your conductivity needs to be higher. The less ethanol you have, the less conductivity you need in the system to get more boiling and condensing going. So that's why we've got a relatively low amount of vents. Yeah, it's all behaving pretty well now. When you have the initial eruption, the oil will be hotter than it was previously, or than the water going in regularly comes out of steam. The oil will be much hotter than 245 degrees C. So if you build your Aquatuner, your auto sweepers, any batteries you want to put in before the first main steam eruption, you may need to repair them or rebuild them afterwards. But yeah, now you can see the ethanol is boiling and condensing. If there's no liquid on the bottom, that's a sign that you are there's too much heat going in, and once it stops condensing, you're losing the heat deletion effect, so it's a runaway system. So make sure there's always at least some liquid on the bottom. Make sure there's always at least some rain going on. That's what you want to see. You want to see the 10 kilograms per second continuously coming out this pipe, which we've got, which is the case. And yeah, that's basically it. I don't want to dwell on this too long. But yeah, now we'll talk about some more of the logistical details. It will look something like this. If you don't have this much horizontal space for your vent, you can stack them vertically, but you've got to make sure there's gaps for the steam to actually reach. You can see there's quite a lot of pressure variation. There was quite a lot of pressure variation. It evened out while this wasn't erupting. But there will be quite a lot of pressure variation while it's erupting. And you want to make sure that there's enough steam going to the end turbines that they are working, and that the pressure at the middle isn't reaching the overpressure of 120 kilograms per tile. That's the most important thing. Initial power generation on Ceres is kind of challenging. If you want to do ethanol power, you're either setting up the spigot seals with the bonbon trees, and it's quite a complicated ranching process. You're not necessarily going to get set up immediately when you might immediately need the power. There's no coal for coal power plants unless you print it off with the printing pod. Wood burning produces a ton of CO2, and ethanol generators produce a ton of CO2. The CO2 from the ethanol generator is a big drawback when you're relying on it for power. Obviously, you could go and vent it to space or freeze it in a cold enough room, but it's still quite a hassle. So getting reliable power hooked up early is really important, and you know that the geothermal heat pump is down here. It's not actually that much effort to get it set up with a metal refinery. Just getting some steel to unblock the vent initially. And you can run this without unblocking the vent as well. You can just run the 2 unblocked vents and it's still going to work more or less the same. You don't actually have to do the achievement. And yeah, that's basically it. So let's very quickly go over to the other planets, just so I can show you what it looks like, because it's going to make a bigger impact than you think. So, we're back. This time, we're on the Ceres Minor asteroid. So this is the larger of the spaced out options. And as you can see, the overall setup is very similar. We've still got the heat pump at the bottom of the map, a little distance away from the printing pod. Easier to reach, that's good. We've still got 2 vents in the magma biome, but again, they're surrounded by abyssalites, so that's not too bad. And again, this magma will solidify by the time you get down here, because the obsidian spawns in at 250 degrees C. And then you've got this one up here that's sort of outside of the sulfury biome, a bit more accessible. Now, the issue in this case is that all 3 vents are very close together. So instead of actually having the separate turbines for each, you could do the separate turbines for each, but if we have a look, a 30 tile range is about this much. So in this case, because you've got 2 vents right next to each other, what might actually make more sense is for you to dig out a 60 tile range, insulate that, have the vents output into that range, have the turbines up here, separate them into 2 different rooms, and then you can have this third one have its own 6 tile range up here. You want to keep these systems as self-contained as possible, so that it's not taking up a huge amount of space, because space is kind of at a premium on this asteroid. But on the minor asteroid, there's still enough space that you can get it to work. I'm not going to show you the complete build on this, because it'll take a while to set up, but it's just to illustrate that you can get the vents close together on the Ceres minor asteroid, and in this case, it may be worth combining everything into one room. Especially if the vents are well distributed like this. And in this case, we actually have vertical space between these ones, so we can put in another row up here and have it be a separate room if we want. So yeah, that's what that looks like in this case. And then we're going to quickly head on over to the Ceres moonlet, and I'll show you the blasted Ceres as well, because that's a bit of a different case too. So, we're back. This time we're on the moonlets cluster, we're on the Ceres mantle asteroid, and you'll notice there isn't a geothermal heat pump here. That's because on the moonlets, the heat pump is actually on another asteroid. So if we actually enter debug mode, you can see very clearly that the heat pump is located on this one with the lava on it. So if we go over here, so this is a bit of an interesting asteroid. Let's actually just reveal everything normally. Sandbox mode. There we go. Right, so this asteroid is fairly interesting in that you have the magma on the top of the asteroid, like in the flipped asteroid normally, except there is a middle region that's clear. So you can land a rocket in here somewhere, you can land your Trailblazer module, and get your duplicant to dig through the Abyss Light. The Abyss Light gap is closed, and there's no teleporter over here on this asteroid. So you are going to need to send a duplicant over and have them do the initial digging. So make sure that whatever rocket you send over here is at least fairly robust. You can have a carbon dioxide rocket, and you can have the Spacefarer container, have a canister emptier, dump a load of oxygen canisters in there, and just have a really high oxygen pressure. Your duplicant's going to get popped eardrums, but they'll at least be able to survive long enough to get set up here without any issues. We've done it on Twitch. It didn't take a huge amount of effort. It's a little bit of an extra complication, but then the pro is, over here, the pumps are pretty well distributed throughout the asteroid, and none of them are actually in any sort of dangerous zone. So you can actually just carve out each sort of 30-tile range for the heat pumps. You will need to, again, you'll need to be careful to make sure to vacuum out the room before you get around to all this, but there's still vacuums here. And again, you'll just do the same over here. So definitely in this case, because they're distributed all around the asteroid, you want to give each heat pump, you want to give each vent its own sort of tamer area, and make sure that it's not getting in the way of you actually setting up a habitable base on this planetoid. Here, what we could do is you could land here, you could set up your liquid lock here to get in and out of space easily, and then you've got a little tunnel that you can go down, you can set up an access shaft between the vents, set up your base in this sort of Draco-y area, clean out the gases. You can set up your base in this area as well, you can set up a little initial base in here, there's no obstacles here. And then just get everything hooked up. Again, there's lots of water available for you to just get this initially hooked up. And the mass loss of the water from running the heat pump is very small. So even if there's not actually a water source on this asteroid, it is perhaps a case where you're generating enough water through some other processes, or you're possibly importing it from another asteroid to fill it up. I mean, let's have a look at this one. Let's have a look in debug mode again. So if we actually look at this one, it has a steam vent, a water geyser, a cool steam vent, and a saltwater geyser. I think this asteroid generally does come with water sources, so you should be fine. But you do just have to think about where you're going to set up your base, because these things are going to be kind of in the way of you setting up your base, but it's absolutely worth it. The only caveat with the Ceres moonlets, because the heat pump is not on your main asteroid, how are you actually going to get that power anywhere? Well, there's two options. One, if you have the Bionic Booster Pack DLC, you can use that power to charge power banks and distribute those power banks to your other colonies, either via rockets or preferably via payload launchers. Fire those batteries or your other moonlets, and that will do. And if you don't have the Bionic Booster Pack, or you don't have access to power banks for some reason, you can get some. You can just get some material with a high heat capacity, heat it up with something, and then send that hot material in payloads somewhere, and then run it on steam turbines on the other planet. It's a little bit more convoluted, and a little bit less appealing than on the main asteroids, but still definitely a good option. And there's still enough room here. You can set up some dupes here. You can set up your you can set up some power-consuming buildings like data miners over here if you really felt like it. There's Drecos. You can set up some glossy Drecos, get some plastic, get some data miners running with the Bionic Booster Pack DLC. You have options, but in summary, on this moonlet, the magma is not going to get in the way at all. You can just leave the magma here. It's not going to be an obstacle. We left it here when we did this on Twitch, and we were able to get this set up pretty easily. We actually set ours up for space materials, which will be the focus of another video, but you could very easily get it set up for steam power and just hook it up to export it via payloads. That's totally a thing you can do. And now we'll actually go over to the blasted Ceres asteroid so you can have a look at that. So we're back, and now we're on the blasted Ceres asteroid. Now this is a bit of a weird one. So you start in the normal sort of flux biome, but you're surrounded by minus 80 degrees snow. And then you've got some fairly normal shenanigans going on here. One of the ethanol biomes leaked. It generated like this. I barely unpaused it. But that's not going to influence what we're doing. Essentially, there's a space vacuum gap in the middle of the map, and then there's a load of magma. So tunneling down here is fairly easy, and actually, because there's vacuum down here, provided you set up your liquid locks so they don't break and you don't leak all of your base's gas out, you can dump your carbon dioxide from your ethanol generators in this vacuum gap pretty conveniently. So that's something about this map that's worth noting. You will actually have to tunnel through the magma somehow, but there's usually a path available to do it. The game, like, it's a little bit of effort to get through it. You're probably going to have to dump some liquid or some gas in here, like kind of like what's happened in this world generation that was very weird, to solidify some of this magma. All of this magma and obsidian is very hot. This is the normal magma biome stuff, so it's not just going to cool immediately, unfortunately, like the other Ceres asteroid. In this case, there's a fairly big chunk of obsidian that you could tunnel through, and then actually just perhaps push some magma out of the way, and then connect it in here, and then you get into the oil biome. So it's a little bit more challenging to access on this scene. But the other quirk is the heat pump and the vents all spawn near the top. So what will actually happen is setting up the turbines above the vent is going to be quite annoying. So what you may actually want to do in this case is, let's say you actually open it up down here. You leave the vacuum room intact, and then you open it up down here. You drain out the rest of the materials, and then you would need to actually have the turbines off to the side. So because these vents are quite close to each other, in this case you have a 30 region here, and you have a 30 region here. So you can connect these in one big room. You can connect these in one big sort of vacuum room, and then have two different sealed off rooms with the turbines in them. Some of the steam will come down here, some of the steam will come down here. It'll be fed from both vents, and the pressure will be lowest in the middle in this case, because there's one vent on each side. So you do have to get a little bit creative with how the vents are positioned on this asteroid. This one here as well, because it's actually right next to the heat pump, it may actually be a case where what makes the most sense is to just build your insulated tiles in space and drywall it, and then get it set up. But you can just take the concept that we looked at for the Ceres major asteroid, and you just got to find some way to worm it together and position it somewhere where it makes sense on the map. And what you can also do is you can just get one vent hooked up to start, get a fair bit of the power going out of that, use that to bootstrap your colony, and then use that extra resources and power you've got to take more time calming down this area and then setting it up a bit more neatly. But the long and short of it is, neatness doesn't matter too much. Obviously, you have to do things good enough, but it doesn't have to be perfect for this to make more power than your colony will ever need. So let's go back to the Ceres major asteroid before I lose my sanity. So, yeah, that's more or less my thoughts on just how to initially get the geothermal power plant set up in your run as quickly as possible, no matter what sort of Ceres asteroid you're on. It's easiest on the Ceres Major and Ceres Minor asteroids for sure, but you can make it work on the Moonlets cluster and the blasted Ceres seed pretty quickly as well, if you're determined. All you need to do is get down to the area. You just need to actually find the pump at the bottom of the map. You need to get some hot liquid going into it to start to blow out the vent. You can set up a metal refinery here, make some steel. You need to make some steel to get this running in the first place. And then you can put some oil in here from the oil biome, which you'll have access to. You can run that through your metal refinery once, making steel, and it will be hot enough to blow out the lead blockage on the blocked vent. That's absolutely fine. And then once you've unblocked it, you can just disconnect your oil from that and set it up elsewhere. You can pump some initial water in from elsewhere on the asteroid, just your initial throughput for these steam vents. And then, once it's all done, the water will get heated up by 150 degrees. It will go into the steam turbines. You can set up your steam turbines based on map logistics and what's most convenient to actually build. And once it goes through here, it'll be hot enough to generate an absolute metric ton of power. You can just pump the water straight back out of the steam turbines, back to the geothermal heat pump, and run it on a more or less completely closed system. You only need to put in a very small amount of input water to keep it running. If you have a single water source in your colony hooked up, even perhaps a bathroom loop for a decently sized colony, you can absolutely get it running forever with zero major automation, no actual power cost, apart from cooling the steam turbines, which they generate their own power for. And yeah, it's very efficient, gives you more power than you'd reasonably ever be able to use in the game, especially if you tune up all of the steam turbines with microchips from the power control station. It's very easy to do. I think a fun challenge would actually be to see who can actually set up their geothermal heat pump at 30 kilograms per second of water the fastest. I reckon if you were determined enough, you could probably get this done by sort of sub-cycle 100. That's how streamlined it can be. You need a little bit of plastic for the steam turbines. You do need to make some steel with the metal refinery. But you can do a fair amount of bodging, and you can put it together. And the result is so much power, you can just do anything else you want to do in your colony. You can actively cool a load of stuff. You can run a load of recreational buildings. You can run a load of data miners if you've got the Bionic Booster Pack DLC. You just have endless options for what you want to do. So, yeah, that's pretty much the video. Those are my thoughts on using the geothermal heat pump for generating lots and lots of steam power using 30 kilograms per second of water. You can get to the heat pump fairly early on in the game. You do need to make a little bit of steel, but you'll have all the tools available for you to do that on the Ceres asteroid fairly early if you really want to beeline it. Then it's just a matter of actually getting to your vents, making sure you can maintain the vacuum that they're in, expanding out from that, and then building all of the insulated tiles that you require to just get your steam turbines set up. Thinking about where you're going to actually position your steam turbines, how you're going to connect the steam to them, is going to depend a lot on where the vents are positioned in the map. So that's why there's no real one build I want to show you for handling the vents, just a few guiding principles I wanted to show you. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the geothermal heat pump. Let me know in the comments what you like to do with it with regards to steam power. We will do another video about getting the advanced space materials, niobium and fullerene from it. That's a whole other kettle of fish. Have you had any wacky layouts on your asteroids trying to get all these vents hooked up to your turbines without disrupting your base? I think it's particularly interesting on the moonlit asteroids just because there's not a lot of actual room for everything. So it's a bit more of a challenge than just digging out a section of solid igneous rock and obsidian. But yeah, I like it. I think it's a bit overpowered. It's very easy to actually get it hooked up. But that's not necessarily a problem. It's a reward for doing all of the Frosty Planet Pack stuff and just your dupes coping with the freezing conditions to start with. But yeah, we've investigated this thoroughly on our Twitch runs. We just did the Blasted Ceres series where we had a long look at it. And Yeah. I think this has gone dormant just because one of the other vents is broken, but that's fine. On that note, I'll let Whiskers see us out, and I'll hope to see you soon on the Twitch. Bye for now.
Whiskers sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers and YouTube members: 999999999, Echo Ridge Gaming, FRD. Ion Elgis, Neo Deus Machina, Quantum Zari, Stinger's Playground, Sweet Danger Kitty, Transcension, and Uglavisk.